Hello viewers, so welcome to this tutorial. So this is the implementation of a runtime error and how we can actually handle what is known as a runtime error. Okay, now bear in mind a little piece of advice. If you're receiving input from the user, you already know that by default it is a string value. So if I receive two input from a user, okay, and after receiving the input I have first value and I have input enter. I don't want to write much lines of code. Okay, so let's shorten everything and I have second value input enter. Okay, now let's see if I should add this to first value second value. Okay, add to them. Okay, now if I should run this code and I enter 1 and enter 2, the answer should be 3. By 2 is 12. Why? Because this is a string. Anytime you use the input, it becomes a string. So let me duplicate this code and have type first value and type second value. Okay, so let me separate them in the comma. So I'm checking the type of what they are, the class type, and I'm told they are strings. So remember to change it to an integer. Now why did I bring this to the tutorials? So this is also an example of a logical error. So instead of 1 plus 23, 1 is a string, 23 is a string, and adding a string to a string will put all those strings on a single line. So we have 123. So this is an example of a logical error. Be mindful about it. Okay, so let's move into what we have to do for the day, dealing with runtime errors. So I ask a user to input a value, which is user input. Enter your first value or enter your value. Okay, and after I have a built-in value, not a built-in value in the system, but my own value. So maybe I have system value equals 23. So this is an integer, but any value the user enters is what? A string. Okay, any value the user enters is a string. So let me handle that string value int and int. So what happens here is if I print user input plus system value and I execute the code, I have 23 plus the built-in, which is 23. So 23 becomes 46. Okay, so what if by mistake the user enters a string? Just check this out. If I should run this code and the user enters hello instead of a value and I press enter, now this hello cannot be transferred into a string. Cannot be transferred into an integer because it's a string value. So if I should hit enter, it says value error, invalid literal for int, base 10, and all this kind of English. Alright, so what they're trying to say is this value called hello is an invalid literal when it comes to integer. So the user has entered a string instead of an integer. Okay, so this is where we have to do what is known as error handling. We have to make sure that we handle errors within our code. So say if the user enters a string, let it be known as error. If the user enters an integer, let it be known as errors. Okay, so that's what we have to know. Let me teach you another kind of error, and moreover, there's one thing I want you to emphasize on. Python is so good when it comes to identifying runtime errors, as it identifies what is known as syntax errors. But Python's ability to handle runtime errors is so good than syntax errors. Why? Because you saw within a syntax error that it kind of puts the error at a different location. So you have to know that it deals with the previous location when we're dealing with the list and dealing with a for loop and other stuff. But it doesn't always run so. Sometimes it gives you the error at a particular point. But with runtime errors, it gives you a hint of what the error is. Check this out. If I have hello, it says it is a value error. So when handling the errors, we use what is called value error to handle the errors. Okay, well, I'll teach you everything you have to know about that. So check this out again. If I'm to enter 0, let me say I'm asking the user to enter a value and the default value I have is 0, which you and I know that any number divided by 0 is not possible. Okay, so if I try to run this code and the user enters 12 divided by 0 is not possible. So Python says 0 division error. So it makes it simple for you to handle the errors. Okay, so we're going to begin with the syntaxes we have to use when it comes to running these individual errors. So I just wanted to give you a concept of how they work, and these are the possible errors that are being able to occur, or that are possible of occurring. Okay, so these are what you have to know within this tutorial, and the next tutorial I'll teach you the real thing of how to handle them. So you now know the kind of errors which are displayed and how to read the errors so we can use them to handle runtime error. So zero division error, meaning this is the built-in syntax we have to use, or the built-in provider we have to use, so we are able to handle these individual errors. So thank you for viewing. Check out for the next tutorial where we meet things like try, things like except, things like finally, and things like else to deal with handling runtime errors. So subscribe to the channel if you have not, hit the bell to receive more updates, and moreover leave any comments, like the videos if they're informative for you. Thank you for viewing.